Welcome to the AviAssist Focus Sessions. The AviAssist Foundation has been promoting aviation safety for over a quarter of a century, since 1995. In our focus sessions we inform, inspire and entertain African aviation safety. We talk about things that are crucial if we want to raise the bar on safety, and we'll introduce you to inspiring safety professionals. This season we've also added something new and exciting to the focus sessions. You have a chance to win $100 in cash in each episode. And as you know, we do this for two reasons. The first is that the game show will give you some insight into what inspires my guests here at the table. And the second reason is simple. It gives you a chance to win $100. You'll see a web address at the bottom of the screen. At that page you can submit the 3 letters that I'll give you throughout the broadcast, and that together from a 3-letter code. Every 10 minutes or so we'll show you one of the favorite books of a guest here at the table. All you have to do is write down the first letter of the first name of the author, and you'll end up with a 3-letter code. You enter those 3 letters on the Google form page and then click submit. But you can only submit your 3-letter code until 15 minutes after the end of this particular focus session. From among the correct answers we'll draw one lucky winner and send that person her or his $100 by mobile money. And we'll announce the winner on our LinkedIn page, so that's a good reason to go to LinkedIn and follow the AviAssist Foundation. When an average person in the street thinks of aviation safety, she or he often thinks of aircraft and the crew on board. The average person does not very often think of safety in ground handling. Accidents in ground operations and ground handling cost our industry billions of dollars globally every year. But often we don't read about them because they don't make international headlines. We want to keep the staff of ground handling companies safe and healthy. We also want African operators to be able to have their aircraft fly and not sit on the ground, help them recover from the COVID pandemic. Having an aircraft on ground, or AOG as they call it, due to ground incidents is a common and very expensive affair. In ground handling, you don't want to see the IATA delay code 52DG, which denotes damage in ground handling. You don't want to see that appear in reports. Today we'll be talking about safety in ground handling. I'm joined here at the table by Chamzu Anjorin, Wout Ruys and Jonathan Lewis. Let's get started and dive into safety in ground handling. Chamzu, I think perhaps you don't need much more introduction anymore because you've been here with us at the table quite a few times, but then again we also keep picking up new viewers, of course. So here we go. 4 decades in aviation, and you often say basically in 2 parts. The first part was where you qualified as an aviation engineer and you worked with the Pan-African airline Air Afrique in the west of Africa. No longer exists, but in that role you were initially in the engineering part and then also got senior management positions in commercial and sales parts. And then the second part of your career was with aircraft manufacturer Boeing. Initially covering the safety role for all of Africa, but again also sales and commercial roles crept into your life there basically. You're also one of the people behind the International Aviation Services Organization, IASO. What does IASO aim to achieve?
IASO, thank you for this introduction. IASO is, as I said, the International Aviation Service Organization. The aim is to bring together service organization and have them incorporate safety standard in their operation. Not only the ground handlers, but also all the service around the airports and so that they have safety embedded in the safety standard embedded in their operation.
And what other companies than just ground handling then? What can we think of?
It could be, most of them are ground handlers, of course,
okay.
But it could be flight services,
support services in general,
fuel suppliers, and others.
Okay, well thanks so much and welcome to the studio. Wout, that brings me to you. You studied construction engineering in Eindhoven a southern city, a city in the south of the Netherlands, that's best known for being the birthplace of the Philips factory, I think, where they used to produce light bulbs and radios and TVs in the early electronic days. Not long after your study, you joined ground handling company Vigo, where you now hold the position of quality and safety manager. But equally, you're on facilitator in the AviAssist ground operation safety course, which have brought you to Rwanda and Kenya, I think, at least. Now, there are 3 universities in the Netherlands with a technical focus. Why did you choose Eindhoven?
Thank you, Tom. Why I chose Eindhoven? I have to admit that it was already from the region where I'm born with my parents. And there is a different focus between the different technical universities. So there is aviation studies in Delft that is more about the structural side of aircraft. And I was more interested in the management part of processes, maybe then on a construction site, but that could also be adjusted to airports. So that's why I chose more process focused.
So it was a combination that you were from that region, so it was your home turf.
That was already easy.
But also because it's the focus of the university.
Yeah, I think that's should be the main decision.
Okay, well, welcome to the studio as well.
Thank you
Great
very
to have you here, not just with us in Africa, but also here in the Netherlands. Jonathan, you joined us before in a focus session that looked into organizational culture. Born in Zambia, you started your career with a degree in biology, and then your career actually brought you to one of the biggest banks of the United States, Chase Morgan, I think is the correct word.
That's right.
And from there, you joined your father in managing the operations of ground handling company NAC 2000, where you are now the managing director. Chamsu spoke about standards. NAC 2000 is the only ISAGO IATA certified ground handler in Zambia and provides services at all the 4 international airports. And importantly for us, NAC 2000 is also a corporate friend of AviAssist, meaning you make our work possible as well, which is crucial. Now, going back to your start before your career, this degree in biology, what started your fascination with biology? Why did you want to go into that domain initially?
First of all, thanks for having me back, Tom. Biology, well, I've always been fascinated with the natural sciences, with medicine. I'm just basically into technical subject matter, and what better than life sciences and
biology.
Yeah.
But you practice very far away from biology nowadays.
It still is a passion that I have.
Okay.
And I think there are lots of transferable, logical facets that come from that subject matter that transfer into pretty much any profession. So
and of course, living in Zambia means you have an abundance of fantastic wildlife.
The best in the world.
Well, there you go. Here's a proud man speaking. Great to have you at the table again,
Thank you.
Jonathan. Welcome. Well, with your experience and expertise, which you've built up throughout your careers, we'll focus on, as I said, safety in ground handling. Now, the IATA Safety Report of 2020 identifies 3 main threats to ground handling operations. First of all, the high turnover of personnel. Secondly, IATA identified a lack of positive safety culture implementation. And the third thing they implemented, which is a bit of a catch-all, I think, is the lack of SMS implementation, safety management system implementation, with very little interface quite often with the airline accidents in ground handling. So those accidents in ground handling and ground handling incidents, like I said, cost the industry billions of dollars a year, and we want to make sure that, particularly I think the starting point is to keep the staff safe. Yes, you have production goals, but that's also involved to make sure that those aircraft don't sit on the ground and your staff is keeping safe. Now we're all recovering as an industry from COVID, which means perhaps we have to work even harder to keep those aircraft flying, because we need that out there and make sure that they fly and earn money. So if we look at the first topic, because we'll again look at safety in ground handling, the first topic about the lack of the high turnover of personnel and the challenges we quite often find in that respect. Jonathan, if I can take it to you initially maybe, what are some of those challenges you see in your operations and in the industry in relation to that high turnover?
Thanks for that, Tom. I think that generally speaking, people view ground handling as a sort of unprofessional, very basic task. And when people get involved in the job, they don't see much of a career path. So I think this is one of the major contributors to the high turnover.
The lack of a career path, or perceived lack of career path.
Perceived lack of a career path, and I believe this is the main thing, and then maybe organizations not able to demonstrate a career path as well. Okay. So, and obviously the nature of the work.
Yeah, which is outside and noisy very often, etc. So basically, I forgot to introduce the viewers to the main three topics we'll be dealing with. And the first one is indeed, how can we develop training and career development opportunities, so we can focus on that in our discussions later on. Secondly, we'll look at how we can improve the link between training new employees, beginning with sometimes students in the case of Vigor 2000, Mac 2000 and Vigor,
nice name.
And safety culture, including reporting and self-reporting. And the third topic for today would be the role of training for safety promotion. I think particularly, Jamsu, you've got some strong ideas there as well from my ASO background. Now, Wout, what struck me when I first visited your offices was the deliberate choice that you as an employer made to bring on board pupils from a vocational training center that is located very near to your operations, I think, and almost infuse those pupils with your company culture from the very beginning onwards. Tell us a bit more about how that works.
Yes, true, Tom. We have a school very nearby to the airport, and this is a school specialized also in aviation services. But we find it important to not first have to done your years of study and then find out if that suits you, the aviation, but really have practical experience during your studies already in the job of being an assistant, services. And we see this younger students nowadays, or maybe if I'm speaking as an old man now, the most of the social aspect is one of the service-oriented aspect is one of the biggest things they should be studied, and that you cannot learn in a class.
What do you mean is the social aspect, the interaction with
the
customers?
interactions with customers, yes, and also the irregularities that happen during a day is not what you're. In the books, everything runs perfect.
Yeah.
When you are at the airport, you will see every day there's challenges, and it's how you can handle these challenges and how you make the challenge experienced by the customer is like one of the biggest assets that you have.
But I think what I also found particularly interesting, and then I'll come to you in a moment, I think, Jonathan, in terms of how that works with you in Zambia, but is the fact that, yes, of course, you can say it's important pupils who are learning get some experience so they can do an internship or something like that. But in this case, it goes much further, isn't it? Because I think basically from their first moment entering this vocational training center, they also work with you for 1 day a week and they get to wear the Vigor uniform.
Yeah, they get to wear the Vigor uniform, and it's also that our employees of our company are the teachers at some classes, because they can also...
Not all of the classes, but some.
Not all of the classes, but they can at least share their experience, so they have inside knowledge of people that already work in this industry. And that's harder for a teacher to keep up this experience, of course.
Because they don't work in that field.
No, not anymore.
Every day,
yeah.
And so actually, I think it even goes that far that partially that school is now based in the airport building,
yeah.
I think?
Yeah, like in the newly expanded building, it's integrated inside the building.
Jonathan, does that sound like music to your ears, or do you have that already? I have no clue.
Unfortunately not. That sounds like a very progressive idea. Unfortunately, in the environment in which we operate, most people encounter the industry when they start the job. That is their first exposure to the job, and this is the point at which they're understanding even what aviation is. You know, at a very basic level, the number of people that are working ground handling that have actually flown in an aircraft as a passenger is very low. So very progressive, and I think this is something that, generally speaking, should be how do you say, copy and pasted
Yeah,
in the
encouraged.
region.
And I think it is happening a bit, isn't it? Because I think in Zambia you have an institute now that starts to focus on aviation training, not so much pilot training, but service training.
Well, again, unfortunately not.
Okay.
Most training schools focus around pilot training, around engineering,
Yeah.
and very few around ground services. I think this is a huge missed opportunity. You perhaps need 20 crew to fly an aircraft, but possibly you need about 40 to 50 to service it on the ground. So it's also a job creation opportunity that I think really needs to be looked into, certainly in the region that I work in.
Yeah. To make perhaps a better connection or an earlier connection between youngsters, if you like. Because even when they join you, they've just come off secondary school, basically, which is also what happens in your case. You undoubtedly employ school leavers who have finished secondary school and then start maybe as an aircraft loader or something.
Absolutely. And for example, you may train 20 pilots who will operate for 20 years, but you probably need to train, I don't know, a significant number more of ground services personnel to operate for that period of time.
To cover 20 years because of this high turnover.
Not only the high turnover, but just the need for more staff.
Okay.
I think there's a misconception about how much staff are needed to actually handle an aircraft, from check-in all the way through to baggage loading, offloading, and all the other ground services provided.
And I guess, of course, what we quite often see in Chamsu, maybe that can bring me to you in terms of IASO, but is when youngsters in probably everywhere, but certainly in Africa, think of a career in aviation, they think pilots or they think air traffic controllers, and maybe they think firefighter. But I think, shouldn't we do a much better job as an industry to show people that there are other interesting jobs and careers out there?
Certainly, Tom. John mentioned earlier that the organizations are not doing a great job motivating young people to come into ground services, and I fully agree with that. If we look at the importance, the contribution of the ground services to the success of the aviation, it's not sufficiently highlighted, and that could be a motivational criteria, because for you to keep your on-time performance, you need a good organization on the ground service.
Yeah, and make sure that happens efficiently.
Yes, and we cannot succeed in aviation if you don't have that on-time performance, and the time pressure that you have to work under also is a factor that you have to manage in order to not to create safety hazards, safety challenges, and being part of that system should bring some level of pride, but we need to highlight that in engaging the people in ground services.
And when you say pride, do you mean to say that in the ideal situation, people shouldn't just come to work for money, but also because they like working
exactly
in ground handling?
Yeah, and so that it's always important to connect what people do to the big picture. So, that message has to be conveyed to people at all levels of the organization.
I see you nodding, Johnson. What do you mean
well,
in terms of connecting the big picture to the employee?
A lot of people, again, don't really appreciate the connection between the flight crew, the ground crew, and making the entire operation happen. So I couldn't agree more. And obviously, I'm in the sector, and the importance of the sector, as far as I see it, especially to do with safety and people, is all about encouraging professionalism of the individuals. So a baggage handler is not just a baggage handler. They have a very important part to play, and they are professionals. Same goes with a pushback driver or anyone else operating on the ramp.
And I think there's also a safety and a financial component, Wout, isn't there? If you think of the sponsor of this session is ATR, aircraft manufacturer ATR. they have every interest to make sure that as few incidents happen to their aircraft, and the same for the operator, let's say Kenya Airways or ProFlight Zambia. Because what also quite often is the case is because the amount of damage done is lower in monetary value, it quite often means that that money comes from the operator itself and not being covered by insurance, for example. If it's a bit of damage of only $20,000, it'll eat directly into the profits of the operator. Is that something, do you have a dialogue at Eindhoven Airport with those operators to try and minimize those damages?
Yes, at least we have a dialogue. They share, like we share. If we have an incident, we will share it with the community. We share it with the airline and we share it to other stations to learn from each other. So it's also in safety. There's no competition. Like we have competition on money on
with competitors, you mean? But in
this
case,
but in safety we will share everything and we try to learn from each other. And maybe even have a brainstorm together to just professionalize also the whole industry, because we are all in the news. When one of us is in the news,
we're all
everybody will think like, oh, this aviation or the ground handling companies are unprofessional. And it's also maybe therefore harder for us to hire new people, to find new people.
Because of the reputation. And
reputation of the industry. So I think therefore is really important to share and to bring together ideas and work with each other about a safer and more efficient and more professional environment to work.
Okay, it's time for our first book, gentlemen, for the viewers out there to have a chance to win that $100. So the book is Jonathan Livingston's Seagull, and it's written by Richard Buck. So that means you need the R, the Romeo, to put on your form out there on the Google form, so that you have a chance to win this $100. It's almost a fairy tale, if I recall correctly. It's a long time ago since I read it, so the first letter is there. Jonathan, how do you think we can improve? I mean, you spoke about the importance of improving training and career opportunities, but how can we do that? What can we do to improve the vision that ground handling is not just something you do for 6 months, you load aircraft, but you can stay in that industry? What's ideas?
I think I mentioned that demonstrating a career path. We have many people who start with what are considered very low-level jobs that end up in management positions. In fact, my very own father was a marshaller for Zambia Airways and ended his career as the managing director of Zambia Airways.
Okay.
So that in itself a very inspiring story for myself, obviously, and for others out there. So really, I think to demonstrate career paths, this is something that would encourage people to get more involved and treat the job more professionally.
But won't people just think, well, that's what the boss says when he wants to be nice? No, you can grow into a more senior position. But now to create that path is, of course, challenging because it often requires training, for example, and experience.
I don't think anyone can underestimate the value of training. Training will always show its worth, and this is something that all ground handling organizations should focus on.
And invest in.
Yeah, continuous recurrent training, demonstrating career paths, and following best practices. I think this is
what Chamsu was also talking about in terms of IASO, promoting these best practices. Indeed. I think, and one of the reasons what I found also very fascinating about when I first visited Vigo a few years ago, I shouldn't say Vigo 2000 again, Vigo, is the approach you have there in terms of people climbing through the ranks, if you like. Because I vividly remember this supervisor of a turnaround with a coat that said supervisor, and the next flight you showed me, that supervisor had a different role. Can you explain a little bit how that works within Vigo?
Yes, in training we also want to offer a career path, and we think it's also better for a nicer job when you don't have to do every day the same thing. So we really focus on multi-skilled working, and that means that you can have different jobs during the day, but also per flight can differ. So you can be one flight, you can be the supervisor of the flight, the dispatcher, The next one, you are the pushbacker, the catering, or the cleaner, or the baggage loader.
The same person could
The
be
same, the
in
same,
one day.
the same person can be in one day, and I think it's also important that every person that works in our operation, that is one of those services, always has the lowest skill we call the loading skill. So everybody can load baggage. That's the basic skill that everybody needs. That's the main main core of a business, is loading the baggage on the ramp. But everybody should be able to do it, and there's nobody that only has to do pushbacks and has a very relaxed day maybe. And other ones other ones hardworking and sweating in the hold, but everybody has maybe less than others, but at least also takes part in this process. And I think that's how you share the work, the energy that you need. It also makes it possible for others to keep up with the work. If you are only loading, you can also do some other things. So for you, it's easier to work the whole day, and to work a whole year in this kind of.
Because if you do the loading every day, all day long,
it will be very
it's
physically tiring, and like we don't expect you to retire in this function.
No.
We don't want you, like it's unhealthy. So we know it's unhealthy, and that's why we need you to get other skills also to make it physically possible to work in this way.
To work, and at the same.
If I may come in.
Yeah.
How is the labor law applicable to that? Because in some countries, in some system, think of the French law, for instance. If you are qualified for a certain job, you cannot be affected to a lower skilled job, things like that. How do you?
You can be qualified, and we will pay you for that qualification, but it doesn't mean that you cannot do lower qualification. In our case, in the Dutch law, is also like this.
As long as they're qualified.
Yeah, so it's maybe also this way of working can be a little bit more expensive in that way, because we.
For you as an employer.
Yeah, we over qualified people, but in another way, it's also very efficient. Like you always have sufficient people that can do catering. There's not that only person you are relying on and that's sick today.
Yeah.
We always have a spare. Like there's always somebody else in the team that can do the same work. So that gives also a lot of flexibility in that case.
Yeah.
And,
I mean, to me, this is interesting as well, because obviously a business will benefit from multi-skilled employees, less pressure on the resource pool, and makes for a better understanding of less silo working as well.
Because you understand somebody else's job.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So this leads to the efficiency Wout is talking about, something definitely I'm taking on board.
I mean, hopefully we'll be visiting Vigo in the future somewhere. That would be great, and then you can see it with your own eyes. And maybe we can invite everybody out there. I have no clue, but it's certainly worthwhile. I mean, it'd be great to make a video about that one day, and see how.
Yeah, we can at least the principle.
The principles already. Yeah, well, you don't want to share all the secrets of the trade, of course. But, gentlemen, time for our second book. I think this is you, Jonathan, who took this. The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. Coelho is a Portuguese name, I guess. Coelho.
I believe so.
Anyway, it's all about the first letter of the first name, so it's not so much so important. So on your form out there in Africa, if you want to win this $100, the letter P, Papa, as we say in aviation, is the second letter you'll need. Chamsu, when it comes to the training of ground handling personnel, we spoke about it extensively. How can we, you think, better cater for that and better get the maximum effect on safety promotion? Because in the end, that's what AviAssist is all about. It's nice to train them for their own career, etc. But what can we do to better use them as champions for safety, basically?
That is one of the objectives of IASO, is to have to bring together all these safety aviation service organizations to organize, because maybe it's not easy at the level of only one operator, but be able to organize applicable curricula for various category of service organization, and also tailor it to, for instance, you have ISEGO is there, which is, but ISEGO requires a lot of criteria, and so sometimes it's beyond the capabilities of some companies.
Smaller operators, yeah.
So IASO is looking into such things, collaborate with IATA and see how we can tailor that to certain organizations meeting the safety objectives while adapting the curriculum to other organizations, to the size of the organization. And this way we think we can have more companies in this industry
raise the standards.
Raise the standards, yeah.
Jonathan, ISEGO, you've been there, you are there. Is it easy as a small operator?
It's certainly not an easy task. It's a multi-year project.
A multi-project, multi-years?
Multiple years to attain the certification. It's something obviously that we're very proud of, but like Chamzu says, it's not necessarily easily accessible for many ground handlers, especially smaller organizations. So I think in order to help smaller ground handlers, we need to also pull in the airlines. The airlines have a wealth of experience. They have the capacity, the capability to also assist ground handlers to operate at the standards and levels that they expect. So yeah, I would encourage more airline participation, as it were, and kind of blur the line between us and them.
Okay. Is there a line now, you feel?
In many aspects, yes. Everybody needs higher safety standards at a lower cost when we all need to collaborate to achieve the safety goals.
And that was also one of the findings of the IATA report, in the safety report, where they say, this link between the safety management system of a ground handler and an airline is often not there. Also, if I hear you, it's like it's still almost two separate entities. How is that for you in Eindhoven? Also, ISEGO certified. ISEGO, the IATA standard.
ISEGO certified, but I agree on that it can be hard to obtain.
Yeah.
I have myself also be still working on it. Every year it also gets harder. Is my feeling. Maybe it's our company, but I feel, and it's difficult. And I think for the practical means, for the safety standard that you want to reach, you can do it with other means, like with other standards. Exactly. Or with airline standards. Airlines are supervised by authorities, so they know what they need from us, and they can help. So I think that's the most important. And back to your question.
Well, I think also the point that Chamzu is raising on with IASO, that you want to look at perhaps those smaller ground handling companies. I think it's of course important also to remember, and I think that probably you see that in your operation, Jonathan, is that a lot of stations in Africa don't have Emirates flying to them, or BA or KLM. They have smaller aircraft, or maybe you also do charter traffic. You get an aircraft which you've never handled before, but you have to, it comes into Lusaka or to Mfu or to whatever. How do you see that? How does that work for you?
I think because we've built up experience over the years, we can adjust and adapt to those things fairly easily. But like you say, doing first-time handling, for example, on a particular kind of aircraft, these are challenges that are there. And this is why I say sometimes communication between IATA airlines and their ground handlers needs to be better.
But perhaps also between those smaller operators and ground handlers, isn't it? Because IATA is a big lobbying body for major airlines, but you have, of course, in Africa, loads of operators who are not IATA carriers, who will also never be IATA carriers, because that's not their aspiration. But we have to cater for them as well. You literally have to cater for them, actually.
Absolutely. So there are how do you say, the industry standards and practices that we can follow. These can be attained through, different standards that you can follow. ICAO, IATA. We have regional private charter bodies like, is it AFPA?
The African Business Aviation Association, yeah.
Absolutely. So I think as long as there's some sort of reference point, we can certainly raise standards. One of the things that is certainly lacking in the region where we operate is also local regulations, some of which haven't even been fully established with respect to ground handling itself. And I think this is a general issue.
And they could help you raise the standards because you then know what standard you have to perform to.
Absolutely. Obviously, when there's a regulation, there's a compliance issue that has to be attained. So that's something that can be improved.
So there's room, Chamzu, for EASO, I think, isn't it? To make sure that
And
ISEGO, yes, but we also need standards for smaller operators, perhaps, both.
And today, if you look at the whole picture, there is no organization where aviation service or ground handlers have control of. They are imposed certain criteria by the customer, which is IATA, but they could also, among themselves, set best practices that they agree upon that meet the regulations or the international, and that's what I also tend to address.
I think it would
bringing
be
together the organization as like IATA serve the purpose of the airlines,
The major airlines.
to meet not only their own goals but also the requirement from the civil aviation authorities. And so the IASO idea is to bring the service providers together so that they themselves understand the need to establish the acceptable standard that meet the customer's requirement and also their own capabilities.
Yeah, that's important to keep them in mind as well, of course.
And be represented at the global stage. So that's his.
Can hear you.
Yeah. I think it would be very strong to collaborate as ground handlers, to have at least one voice in this discussion about what should be the standards, what would be practical standards, what would be good standards to have good safety. Because the current standards that we have certified, for example, ISEGO, they are also mainly from airlines. IATA is an airline community.
Yeah.
And it's nice that we have them, but they are not always practical. And maybe they cost a lot of energy for us, but they don't bring a lot of extra safety.
Okay.
No, not benefit, but safety benefit even. So it's it's also a lot about organizational structure, management layers, and that you won't see in small airports that are not existent. So it's very hard to implement already the ISEGO standards. While for safety reasons, it should be more on the operational procedures. What are we really doing around the aircraft? And maybe how are we handling changes in the environment that we have to work? Yeah. That would be more important and are really the core elements that should be, and also maybe the core elements of an SMS, of course, you need them. But maybe to what extent and what kind of programs of...
So try and be practical and pragmatic instead of just thinking, what works in Washington, D.C. shall also work
and how many databases we need to cover.
Yeah. It's time, gentlemen, for our last book of the day, for the viewers out there. It's a French book, Chamzu, written by Eric Orsena, La Passion de la Fraternité. So what you need is the echo, the first letter here of the first name, to complete that on your form out there and have a chance to win this $100. Chamzu, briefly, why this book?
It talks about the life of Beethoven. He's a compositor.
Composer Beethoven, yeah.
And then he highlights the importance of fraternity.
Brotherhood, like a brother and sisterhood.
Brotherhood in fulfilling one's life, and is also the way he was able to connect to himself through his music, even when he couldn't hear.
Because he had a hearing problem.
He has a hearing problem,
later in life.
but he was able to create
Great music.
Great music by not even hearing what he's
But
composing himself.
I guess what we're saying here today is what is very important to listen to each other. So we
Yes.
can't say, oh, turn off your hearing and you'll be perfect, I guess. But,
But to listen, you need to be connected to yourself.
yeah. Thanks very much for taking that one, Chamsu. Well, we're approaching the end of today's focus session. It always, at least for me, maybe it's different for you, but you think, oh, but I want to get this in, I want to get that in. In a moment, I'll ask you each of you for one suggestion. How can we improve, particularly safety in ground handling, and maybe link it to this point of the turnover of staff, and that we have to keep bringing new people in. One solution here, I hope, and this is a bit of a plug for a new course that AviAssist is coming up, which we're developing together with you in Zambia, NAC 2000, and Fred Mabonga, your safety manager. A small online module which will make sure that at least those people who, for example, come from a secondary school, I used to live in Kaoma, as you know, Western Zambia, who come from Kaoma and join you, that they at least get a basic grounding in what is dangerous goods, what are human factors, etc. We have Wout as one of the assessors, because the idea is people will do those modules online. You as an employer invest in making time and facilities available for them to attend. And then finally, they end up with Wout with an oral assessment to see if it was really them who looked at the modules, etc. But so I sincerely hope, Jonathan, that's going to address some of those issues. And we developed it together, but the idea is to roll it out to the whole of Africa. And yes, there'll be a small fee because we are a non-profit, but nonetheless we have to meet costs as well. But so I think that's a contribution we try to make. But back to this one point, this one suggestion. Where do I start? A Chinese volunteer or Chamsu? Any one particular thing where you think, well, if we have to raise the bar in terms of safety, in terms of training for people to realize that safety, what would you want to leave the viewer with?
I will encourage ground services to come together and as an association and as an organization, set best practices and share the experiences.
Share the experiences and together define those standards you want to move towards, which don't necessarily always have to be ISEGO standards, because that might be a bridge too far, or your organization might be too young.
As we said, you can meet the objective of those standards while adjusting it to your capabilities.
The reality.
To the realities. And that should come from the involved people themselves, not from outside. External,
Well, and especially because sometimes, of course, those standards, as I mentioned jokingly, but are developed in Montreal, and these people may not always have a good feeling of the context of where you find yourself or your colleagues find yourself in Malawi or Uganda, because in some places the aviation industry is very small, of course.
Yeah.
In Africa. That's
even ICAO has changed the approach. They now look at performance-based regulations, performance-based, so that can be applied at all levels.
Where performance-based indicates that as long as you achieve this safety result, we're happy, and how you get there is less relevant to us, as opposed to saying, no, thou shall meet all these.
Exactly.
Wout, your one...
I was thinking safety and training, and I was thinking about the challenges with hiring people. I think we maybe also should be more open to the outside world, because we need airport passes to see what's really happening behind the scenes on an airport. And I think we also did this with hiring people. We have open days and get people from outside and show them how really the aviation's aircraft of airport services are, so that they can experience and also really see how professional this is, how fun it is. I think fun is also a big part of the game, why you would want to be in aviation. Of course, you need to earn money, but your work should also be a lot of fun, and I think in aviation you can find that.
You can find the fun.
Yeah, and I think we should promote that and show it and be able to show it to people. We do it with social media, so that social media content, but also just experience real life and how important, responsible is your work you can show. Maybe as a passenger people can learn. Well, next time I travel I will do this, or I will check in my bag. I will have a good bag to check in, but I think it's very useful. share the
And the people that you invite would be secondary school children, or what do we?
No. It's also just we looking for full-time jobs. So it's just people, but that are not experienced in aviation. And like if you are just in a city close by, maybe an airport. But what Jonathan also said, our employees didn't fly before, so they don't have any experience with. So it can also be scary to go to an airport and work there. So maybe that's why we should be more open and give people experiences
before they apply for a job, perhaps. Just
and know what they are going to apply for.
Jonathan, over to you.
Well, I was trying to think. One of the opportunities I think in Africa is actually for us to be equipped with the right tools, technology. That's technology of ground support equipment itself, but also other gadgets and applications that can reduce error and manage resources. I think there's an opportunity in Africa. The finance is not always the hurdle. I think it's a mindset issue that we can use technology to leapfrog, like we've done in other sectors, and achieve better safety results through technology as well, aside from all the other things that have been mentioned. So we need to believe that we can attain these things, and not rely on, say, second-hand equipment from elsewhere in the world, and so on and so forth.
But I think in terms of facilities, indeed, also IT is a good point. I mean, all over Africa, there's a whole generation of very IT-savvy youngsters, getting ready. And I think that's something we can also take from Vigo, for example. Initially, before you go into a complex system and you buy software, there's loads of things that you can do with basic things like Microsoft Excel, but then you have to use those. You have to know that you can use them for certain things, and you have to have the capabilities in your organization to deal with those things, indeed. And actually, maybe I can take you to one question, which I thought is interesting in this context, before we close today's session, and that has to do with environment, the environment in which people work. This is a question from Zambia, from Kapemwa. We spoke, I think, extensively. It was mentioned anyway that work and life is more than about just earning money. Part of that is also, I guess, like you said, having fun, enjoying your job. What do you think, Jonathan, perhaps if I can start with you briefly, what do you think an employer, whether it's NAC 2000 or another ground handler, can do to make that environment nicer to work in or safer to work in, perhaps?
Well, obviously, like you say, the environment itself needs to provide for more content within the individuals. So I think providing services that employees themselves can enjoy within the workplace during breaks.
Can you give an example?
Well, simple things like maybe access to a cafeteria, access to somewhere where you can rest in between flights, this kind of thing, I think provides. We need to listen to employees more and understand what they need and want, and provide those things to make them more alert when they're executing their duties.
And delivering the best service that you can and the safest service that you can, which is what we all want in the end.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wout, on the point of personal protection?
Personal attention, I think also.
Attention, okay.
Just like knowing how you are doing at home, also besides your work. You're not only there, like you're not an asset of only working, but you're also a person.
Yeah.
Just knowing how and caring about each other also when something goes wrong.
Being there for each other. And
yeah, I think that's an important asset also of establishing a culture at your company. But also because if you have personal attention for as an employer, your people will also give personal attention to your customers probably. So I think that's a good
an important ingredient.
Ingredient.
And I think in that respect, I think Corona has brought us, it's a dark cloud, but it has brought us some silver linings, and perhaps the increased appreciation for people's mental well-being, has really increased all over the place. We hear that, and of course we were looking at it before as well. But I think that's one of the points you're taking is don't just think of the person as an employee who does something for you, but it's also somebody who has a home situation, a family life.
And you have to listen. What you want to say? In the end, maybe you also have to buy this machine for drinks, but that is probably something that you will filter out of this content.
From the conversation.
Yeah, from the conversation. Yeah.
Chamsu, in terms of better work environment.
I mean, it's important. We said that employees feel that the connection, the work in the company it has a meaning in their own life.
Not just money.
Not just money, but and for the company to capture that, it requires some openness, some listening. Of course, you need to listen to all employees, and trying to find what connects the employees as a category to the personal life, and not just
to the mission of the company, but also their own mission, almost in life.
So in that environment, you can certainly make magic from people. You can get magic from people if they feel part of the organization. If the company has a meaning in their own life and other. So it's about creating connections.
Yeah, and I think also increasingly in Africa as well that becomes an issue, because once somebody is trained, nowadays in Africa you start to have opportunities to go to different sectors. So if we don't listen to them enough, if we don't give them more than just the money, they may choose to go, especially if they have IT skills, for example, they may choose to go to the banking sector or something.
Yeah.
An extra job for us, I think, in aviation to make sure that it's not just money but also an interesting career.
Part of the HR people, I had an HR telling me, for me, the salary I pay an employee is the level where he's willing to go, and I can't afford him to leave. And I was shocked because it's a
strange starting point.
Yeah. It's not only about that.
No, and research has shown that usually money comes at the 7th place in terms of motivational factor. I hope with AviAssist in the future, with our researcher in Rwanda, Félicien Izetrubanao, we'll also do a bit of research as what motivates African professionals, because they might be slight different. But anyway, that's music for the future. Gentlemen, I'm afraid this is all we have time for today. I've said that before, but now I'm really closing the session. Thanks very much for joining me here in the focus sessions today, and for traveling from your respective duty stations from Eindhoven, Paris, and then you trump it all with Lusaka, Jonathan. Thanks so much. Then to your lovely viewers out there from Djibouti to Senegal to Rwanda and Zambia, thank you for tuning in for Safety Promotion. If you enjoyed today's sessions, then please be our ambassador and tell your friends about the work of AviAssist and about these focus sessions. If you want to help us continue these focus sessions, consider becoming a friend of AviAssist, either a corporate friend like NAC 2000 or a personal friend. You can do that in our web shop, www.aviassist.org/shop. And you can pay in many ways. We've also listened to our customers. In Africa, mobile money is very popular. That's one of the options you can choose there. And I can assure you, your support will go a long way. Come and visit us at our first AviAssist Safety Promotion Centre, the ASPC-Rwanda. We have lots of exciting courses coming up there in 2023 as well, at the centre at the University of Rwanda. And please, don't forget, only you can target safety. Join us for the next focus session as we continue our mission with you to improve African aviation safety. So, same time, same frequency. For now, we say Odabo to our Yoruba speakers, and have a good day to the rest of you. Goodbye.